Can't forget to thank my bar prep program, Legally Fit. Thank you for providing us with the tools and for putting us in a position to win.
Hello and welcome to the 1L Club. Today's session is going to be on reading and briefing. This is the #1 time sucker in law school, and so many students are spending way too long, 7 hours per class, right? Or just going into class super anxious and nervous. Today, we are going to demystify how you simplify this process and get you on track for reading and briefing in under an hour. Let's jump into it. The first thing that we're going to talk about, right, in our overview is what role does case reading and briefing play in law school? And I think for a lot of us, we don't really know what this is, right? A lot of us are just thrown into law school. This is the first thing you're assigned, and then you quickly realize this is the #1 time sucker. Like, this is a lot of what I have to do, all these cases that I have to read. So what role does this all play? So, law school uses the case method to introduce the rules and topics. All your case briefing and reading, it's serving the role of an introduction to the rules, right? So this is a very antiquated method, but it is tradition. You will read hundreds of cases with the goal that you will extract the rules necessary to then create your outline. You must also learn how these rules play off of each other, how they combine. In other words, you're going to have to be able to see the big picture. All right. But again, right, we talked about this in Legally Fit's Law School 101. The end goal is that you are ready to apply your rules to unique fact patterns come the day of the exam. And working backwards from that, those rules that you have to apply, you're going to get that from your outline. And how do you get rules into your outline? From your cases and from going to class. All right. So what is your primary goal when reading and briefing cases? All right, let's go with Hayden on this one. Hayden, what do you think your primary goal is when reading and briefing cases? Just one. What do you think it might be?
Well, I always look for why the teacher wants us to read this case. So what's the topic, or what is the legal rule? What's the black letter law we're pulling out?
Yes, and spoiler alert, Hayden's already a superstar in law school. She's a 2L, coming showing some love. She's already a student ambassador of Legally Fit, so of course she got the right answer. That's exactly what the primary goal is. You're trying to figure out is, what's this main takeaway? What does my professor want me to know? And then just sticking with Hayden on that point, Hayden, going through 1L year already, would you say you had 100% accuracy when trying to assess what that primary takeaway was on your own before going to class?
No, I mean, you hope you do, and I think you get better as you go. But at the beginning, sometimes you're going to be wrong, and that's okay.
Exactly. And this is the last thing I'm going to ask is, if you don't get the right takeaway, all you simply do is what?
Redirect. You're going to wait till you get to class and see what the right takeaway is. If you need to use other sources, you can as well. But you redirect. It's okay.
Exactly, right? So you go to class and you get it. So I want for all my 1Ls that are freaking out about this, right? And a lot of times we have these nerves of like, well, I don't want to be called on and not have it right. Trust me, there is no 1L that 100% of the time is going to have the right takeaway. The only thing that you need to show is that you did do the work and you gave it an honest attempt. And this is what you thought the takeaway was. But remember, you're in law school, either paying to be there or you earned a scholarship. So it is no problem being taught in this environment. So yes, one last time, if you do not get the takeaway on your own, it's okay. Simply go to class and get it. All right, so that is your primary goal. So next, I want to talk about the intangible skills that you build when reading and briefing. All right, there's a list of them. You're going to have the ability to identify and summarize important facts, right? In your cases, you might have 2 full-on pages of facts, and you have to condense that down to maybe a paragraph worth of facts. You're going to have to get familiar with IRAC format, get familiar with legal arguments, and you're going to get familiar with scenarios and triggers for certain areas of the law, right? When you're being taught a particular rule or topic, you're learning it in the context of a real life case that relied on that rule to determine the outcome. So you start to see this stuff in action. Those are all the intangible skills, and you want to make sure you read and brief to gain these skills, right? To develop these skills. That takes us to these 2 popular questions, right? We love these. Can I just skip reading and briefing and pay attention in class? You said the takeaway is going to be right there for me if I just go to class. Do not do that, because you're going to miss out on those intangible skills. Can I just read and brief inside my textbook, right, instead of writing one out? And the answer is no there as well. Right? Do 2Ls and 3Ls sometimes get away with that? Sure. It's never going to be my advice to do that, but maybe you can get away with that because you've already gone through this law school, right, initiation, right, of doing all of your reading and briefing, and you've built those skills. But as a 1L, you do not want to cut those corners. Now, you guys know I love analogies, so here's my analogy for you in this regard. Right? If anybody hasn't seen it, go check out the Karate Kid, right? You remember his sensei, Mr. Miyagi. He had him waxing on and waxing off constantly. And what was the Karate Kid thinking? Why am I doing this? I'm supposed to be punching, kicking, right? Doing actual karate moves. Well, really the wax on and the wax off was building that muscle memory and that strength for the actual moves he was going to be doing. Wax off was blocking. So all that to say, with your reading and briefing, you're actually doing these skills, right? And you don't really realize it. Well, then when you get to the final exam and you have 2 pages of facts and you have to kind of like get rid of the fluff and figure out what are the important facts, that's the same skill you built from all that reading and briefing you did, right? Or knowing how to put things in IRAC format without labeling it IRAC is something you developed in reading and briefing. So don't cut corners, guys, right? It won't reward you. Make sure you do it. Now, is there a time here or there where you have an upcoming deadline and you might have to miss reading and briefing for a case or two? Absolutely. Or it's time to do practice exams, so you have to sacrifice somewhere? Yes. But for those that are looking to just completely avoid this, it's not going to usually pay out very well for you guys. All right. So let's move on now to your case reading system. Now, this is just as important as to how you do it is when you do it. And it's great to have a system. So me and Ryan were just talking about this a second ago of, when are you reading, right? And so he was already using a little bit of what we see here called the steady pace wins the race method. Reading consistently throughout the week with the guiding rule that you read as close to class as comfortably possible. So what we want to do with this method is reverse any stigma that waiting to right before class is procrastination. In this regard, it's not procrastination. And the reason why I love this method so much is that this stuff is very dense material, right? Very kind of complicated, right? Very taxing on your brain, a lot of information to hold. So my thing is that when I'm reading a case, giving my best guess at what the main takeaway is, I want the shortest amount of time and the least amount of information to enter my brain between me reading that and then me going to class and getting the clarity on that. I want that to be as streamlined as possible. So I'll read, again, the latest right before class to have that experience. The other method you're going to see is the bite the bullet method. Now with this method, what you're doing is really bulking your work. And so what you'll see there is that you can choose a day or two and do all of your reading. Now, this method is also serviceable for a lot. It's not my preference, but for those that work full time or have family obligations and have other things that really force them to do this, I think this is more of a method to use if either it really works to your learning style and you can hold a lot of information at once, or your schedule requires it. So just to kind of assist you all with making one of these schedules, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what this could look like. Now, again, there's variations to this, but this is just to kind of get the ball rolling. So first thing that we see here is we have a sample schedule. This is a student that has 5 classes. CRIM stands for Crim Law, Torts, Civ stands for Civil Procedure, Contracts, Laws is short for Legal Analysis and Writing. So if you have a legal writing course, that's what that would go there. And those are your 5 classes. All right, so we see we have a very busy Tuesday. We got 3 classes on Tuesday, starting the earliest, somewhere around 8:30. We have a pretty light Friday, right? So here's a mock schedule. So let's go into bite the bullet method. So on bite the bullet method, as you see here, on Saturday, you're going to use that entire day for outlining and laws, any legal writing. And again, you're going to split your time as it demands for any particular weekend. Some weekends you don't have anything to do for your legal writing course, you're at a good place, and then some weekends you don't have anything to do for outlining. Some weekend you have to do both, right? It's all dependent. Now you see on Sunday, since we're doing the bite the bullet method, we have to put all of our reading and briefing into Sunday. So you're reading not only for 5 classes, but you're reading for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 actual class sessions, 8 different cases on laws that you have never read before, 8 different scenarios, right, in movies. If I told you to if I told you to watch 8 episodes of 8 different shows, right, you're going to forget some of those details as they go throughout the week. So that's why with the bite the bullet method, what those students typically have to do is review before each class. And that's how you pretty much account for that, right? You review so you can get that quick refresher before you go in and you can participate and contribute to class. Now, as you see there in the green, after every, weekday at the end of classes, you have a flex period. Now, right, you can do with that time what you wish. Are you reading and briefing some more if something got left over? Are you outlining, or are you working on laws, right? Those are really your options, okay? So that's the bite the bullet method. Now, this is, again, my preference, the steady pace wins the race method. I'm going to show you how this one develops. So the first thing that I want to show you is that by not having to do all of your reading and briefing over the weekend, you actually have more time now for outlining or laws. What we're doing is essentially bulking our free time for outlining and laws over the weekend. Even a little of that flex time kind of gets incorporated into that. So the only reading that we're doing over the weekend for the following week is for crim and torts. Crim is on Monday, and because Tuesday has 3 classes, and that's a lot to read at the end of Monday, I'm going to go ahead and knock that out on Sunday as well. All right, so I have crim and torts. All right, and then let's go into Monday. Well, now waking up Monday morning, it's a flex. I don't really have to do anything, right? Because I've already prepared for crim just last night. It's already fresh. Now, if I have a big assignment for laws this week, maybe I can use this morning to do some laws. Maybe I like to sleep in a little bit to start my week at a nice, slow, comfortable pace. So maybe I just wake up and take it chill. You have a flex right there, right? And then after that day is over, it's time to get prepared for Tuesday. So again, now you're just getting prepared for the next day, and you're going to read civ and contracts. Then you're going to go into Tuesday, and at the end of that day, now you have the decision of how are you going to prepare for crim. You have 2 options here: to either read and prepare for crim on Tuesday after your classes, or you can do it Wednesday before crim. Just to kind of show you that you have that flexibility, I chose to do it Wednesday. Now, you can't do this for all of your classes, but let's say you say for crim, you know what? It's really quick and easy for me to read these cases. It's very, easy, fun, juicy fact patterns. There's nothing too complicated there. I'm typically reading for this class within an hour and a half based off of like the length of the cases that my crim professor assigned. So I can comfortably do this the morning going into crim. So I'm going to do that. If that's not your jam, if that gives you a little bit too much anxiety waiting that too close to class to do that, then just go ahead and do that Tuesday after your classes. But again, I wanted to show that if you can squeeze it in right before class, don't hesitate. All right, so you read for crim, you go to laws. Well, then on Thursday, you have torts and contracts. I'm going to go ahead and knock that out on Wednesday night. That means Thursday, I got another flex morning. I could take a chill. I could do some more laws, maybe do some outlining if there's that, right? I have options. All right, I'm going to go to torts and contracts. Now I'm done. All I have left is Civ Pro on Friday. So I'm going to go ahead and read on Thursday night. So that way my Friday, all I got to do is show up, go to class on Civ, and then I have the rest of the day after Civil Procedure to figure out what I'm going to do. For me, guys, when I was in law school, on Fridays, unless it was something pressing or a deadline was near, I would spend the rest of my Fridays, like after 12 or 1, just relaxing and just taking a break, right? I don't know if you guys have felt this yet, but by the end of a week, you might be like, oh my God, like so much information, and you just need a mental break. Take that on Friday, and then boom, Saturday, I was jumping right back into it. So with the steady pace wins the race method, the pros are you're not reading ahead and crowding your brain with extra information. You get immediate clarity on what you just read. The cons, sometimes reading the day of or the day before may increase your anxiety. So know yourself. If that just doesn't feel comfortable for you and now you're going into class a little too tense, we don't want that. So play to your style. That's what all of this is about. All right. And then on the bite the bullet method, the pro is that you can kind of get all of your reading done out of the way. That is a nice little plus there. But the cons is that you may forget a good portion of what you read, and this may increase your anxiety for some of us. For me, it did. And then you might you must incorporate review before classes. And so you're kind of doing double the work in that way, right? Where you're doing all of it and then having to review again later, as opposed to just that streamlined approach. All right, so now we're going to get into not just your system, but when it's actually time to sit down and read that case, here's my system for how you can do this faster. Number one is anchor, right? Ryan, what is the issue that happens when you go into the grocery store when you haven't eaten in forever? You're starving hungry and you go into the grocery store. What ends up happening?
Probably going to end up eating what you get immediately.
Yeah, and then also, how about this? You probably end up buying way more stuff than what you need, right? Because you're going down the aisle, right? And just everything looks good. Just throw it in the cart, right? Peanut butter, yep, I already got some. That looks really good today. The nutty, I don't got the nutty one. Let me throw that in there. And you're just kind of all over the place. You spent way more time in the grocery store because you were in there without a list. You didn't know what you were there for, right? So talking about law school and reading and briefing, you don't want to go into your case, right, hungry. You don't want to go into your case without knowing, why am I here? So what you want to do every time you are assigned a case is look up that case in your syllabus or in the table of contents in that textbook. It's going to be assigned to some topic. Let's say you're reading a contracts case and it's assigned to the topic of offer. Well, that offer, right, is the focal point of this. But when you read that case, it's going to talk about acceptance and consideration and maybe defenses because it's a full case. So what that does for us is that if we read some of those things and we naturally want to understand them, that allows us to say, you know what, I'm not really getting what they're saying on acceptance, but that's not why I'm here. So let me not focus on that and obsess over that. Let me just stick to this offer, see if I can get what the takeaway is and move on. So again, anchoring prevents us from going off the rails and trying to understand everything in here when we might only need to focus on a particular portion. So that's step number one, anchoring. Step number two is review a brief of the case online. All right, so there are a lot of free options that students can use here. There are some also paid services out there that have a database of canned briefs, but I think it was just called casebriefs.com, and it's completely free. You just type in your case and it gives you a canned brief. The reality is that some of these cases have been taught for decades for the same takeaway. And so people have created this already made brief and summary for this case. And it's in layman terms instead of legalese and some of this outdated language that they use. So this just gives you the movie trailer to the movie. All right, I know what's going on. This is a thriller. Idris Elba's in it. He's on a plane, right? This is what we're doing. As opposed to kind of going in blind to a movie what is this movie? I don't know what's going on. So review that canned brief. And then as Ryan was just saying, once you then get into reading the actual case, right, after doing the canned brief, everything just goes smoother and faster. Step number 4 about this is think about the case. Now, this is so critical, right? In law school, it's very easy to just quickly move on to the next thing. After you read the case, I want you to stop and talk to yourself in your own language, in your own tone and personality of this is basically what happened here, right? So if I were to read a contract case, it's oh, okay, so this guy wanted to do this construction situation. He did a deal before he knew he could, get all the material ready for this. He didn't get the material, and then now he wants to get out of the deal. Oh, that makes sense. Well, let's see if he's going to be able to get out of the deal, right? Humanize these facts in a way that makes sense to you. That's what thinking about the case is. And then step number 5 is go ahead and brief your case. So we're not going to talk about briefing your case. I think every 1L, gets that instruction from their school. What's your issue? What are the facts? What's the rule? What's the analysis? And what's the conclusion? And you're just trying to go in and identify the main things for each of those sections. All right, so that's reading and briefing. Main takeaways are anchor, and don't be afraid to use canned briefs as that movie trailer because that'll accelerate the speed at which it takes to read that long movie, right? That long case. Here are some main takeaways on reading and briefing. Cap yourself on how much time you spend reading and briefing. At the end of the day, just have hard cutoffs, right? Because you need to be able to work within those time constraints. And remember, worst case scenario is that you go to class and you don't know what the takeaway is, and you'll gain it by paying attention in class. Now, the absolute worst case scenario is you don't know the takeaway, you happen to get called on. Just go ahead and fake it till you make it, right? Go off of what you do know and what your best attempt is, and again, you'll be okay. I can tell you from personal experience, right, not only from being in law school, but witnessing law students now in school for about, 15 years. The student who is in class and knows every single case, every single takeaway, is typically not the student that's earning an A in the class, right? But the student that is, whether they're participating or not, the student that is attentively listening and not necessarily looking for opportunities to show off that they know what they were supposed to get from the reading, but the one that's listening to what the professor is saying and what you need to take away from this, those are the students that end up performing well. All right, so don't over obsess again about reading and briefing. So spend 1 hour max for a single case and 3 hours max for a single class. All right, and then the next thing I want to talk about is that if you want to take this even to the next level and accelerate that, Legally Fit is here to help. So I want to kind of go through how we can use materials from Legally Fit to accelerate this reading and briefing process. So first thing I'm going to show you is what it looks like with your traditional case method. So we're going to take the topic of assault. Anybody who's in torts, this is one of your intentional torts. But if you're not in torts, it's okay. The idea is that you've started learning some topic. So when you start learning a topic, how does this work? The first thing that is done is that you are assigned, let's say, a collection of cases for that topic. On assault, maybe it's 2 to 4, right? Each case will focus on a different component of assault. So you're basically being like slowly dripped, right, the information that will collectively make your rule for that topic. The reality is that in some of those cases, some things you'll be learning is old law, some are good law. But you will then go to class, and again, it's broken up, right, throughout that entire week because you don't have all of your torts classes back to back. So it's all broken up throughout the week. You're slowly getting those takeaways and seeing what assault is made up of. It might take 1 week to finish that entire topic. And then now that you have all these individual components solidified, well, now you have to figure out how to put those all together, and that's the outlining process. So the analogy here quickly is this would be as if, right, the traditional law school case method is if you went to IKEA and got a chair that you had to build, but you got no instruction manual at all. And simply what I did was I was like, here's a leg, right? Here's another leg. Here's a cushion. And you've never seen these pieces or dealt with these pieces, but you're just like, all right, I give you all of that, and then you have to figure out how to put that together. That is what law school is, and again, it's an antiquated method, but we know law school is all about that hazing experience. It's all about, I had to go through it, so now you have to go through it. But that's where Legally Fit comes in, because it's like, hey, this is ridiculous. It doesn't have to be this difficult. So essentially, all we're going to do with the Legally Fit materials is start you off with an actual instruction manual, and more than that, we're going to actually give you a model chair to look at, touch, see where the legs go, the screws go, etc. So when you have these materials, what you see here, what you do is you introduce yourself to assault to begin with. You're going to see what are the rules that are commonly used. What are the common scenarios that this is? So you've seen now all the components and how it fits together, right? So then now when you're going to read your cases, it's like, oh, I already know where we're going. Right? I've already seen the end of this movie, so I know how this all plays out. All right, so that's pretty much, that's the analogy there too. You've seen the end of the movie already, so everything else just makes sense. Now, when you do attend class, one thing that's important is I've given you this pre-made chair. The one thing you have to do is just look out for professor variance. So for all those that have used Legally Fit materials, you know what this is. So you're going to class and it's like, oh, well, for assault, my professor maybe added this one rule, right? Or they subtracted this one rule, or maybe they just added this one little small variation. So you just make these small changes, right? And so using our analogy, I might have given you a chair for assault. Maybe they added an armrest, right? Or maybe instead of having 4 legs to that chair, they had 3 legs. So you make those small variations, which again is a much easier task than just being given all these components and figure it out, put it together yourself. All right, that allows you to outline faster and with more accuracy. So that's it for the 1L Club session today. We are done with reading and briefing. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The next session we'll be doing is on outlining, and you won't want to miss it.